Sorry about that. I tried to click on Gigi's link and did not know that. Actually, I wasn't trying to click on the link. I was trying to pin Gigi's link. Turns out I can't do that on my phone. Sorry about that. And then I accidentally clicked on the link and it led me out of the live, and I did not know that it was going to end the live. But anyway, I'm back here. I'm sorry for the little kerfuffle. Seems to match with our vibe of the day. It's been raining here all night. It's been raining here all day. It's quite gloomy. I'm about to eat some chicken bones with carrots. And maybe we'll read you a chapter of the floating opera. Which turns out to be my very chance purchase from the big reuse that I love. So yes. Anyway, I hope you're eating something nourishing or fulfilling in some way to you. And feel free to ask me questions. And we are here with you, Gigi, as much as we can be, and I'm sorry that you're so alone in the events of your daughter's passing, and I hope for some gentle softness in your life for as long as you might need it. I can't imagine losing a daughter like that. It's just not something that you expect. Do you want us to keep calling you Gigi, or do you want us to call you Sassy Smurf? Sassy it is. We'll call you Sassy Chef. I'm gonna warm this up. Please stand by. Your name is Kara? Do you want us to call you Kara? Make your, we can start a practice, y'all. If your username doesn't match up with the name that you want us to call you, you can say at the top of every live what your preferred name is that we address you by. People do pronouns. We can do preferred names. And we'll do our best. I can't promise I'll see every comment that announces your preferred name, but also feel free to correct us if you have a preferred name. And we're not addressing you by it. The black flat thing, the chair over there, that's the chair. That's Mom's chair. Elizabeth. I see. This is going to be very hard if you already have a name in your username. Oh, yes, this is my scale. Sorry. The chat is hiding this portion of my kitchen, so I didn't see. The carrots don't taste as pungent as the radish do. But I can taste the chicken oil and umami-ness in the carrots. So that's what I'm tasting right now. It's quite delicious. It actually tastes a little bit like the beginnings of smelling gravy. I am enjoying this, and I did not think I would. Sometimes your choices surprise you. Be open to the possibilities. Okay. Sassy, thank you for sharing. Good luck raising your 4 kiddos. Well, we'll be here whenever you want to pop back in. Glad to know they have some sort of figure to talk to, and that hopefully it's not all on you to answer all of their questions that I'm sure they have so many of. I've been eating really shitty, Christine. It's mostly just been all the things that I can taste, which is chocolate, potato chips. I do experiments every day of eating the same things and smelling them. So I did apples, oranges, yogurts, peanut butter, almond butter, dried figs. Those are the things that I love eating, but I can't really taste or smell them anymore. I don't hate chicken feet, but they're very laborious to eat. There's a lot of bony bits in them, and it takes a lot of effort, so I don't find it worth it my time for the most part, but I love the textures of the parts that you can eat. I will say one thing that sucks about the stress is all these beads are making my butt hurt. Ow. It's like a little torture device. I can't smell most shower gels and cleaning stuff. Nope. You tested positive for 6 weeks. Yikes. Well. I'm eating my carrot and chicken bone concoction. There's a big chicken bone coming up. We'll be gnawing it, eating the skin and the cartilage off of it, and then maybe chewing on the bones a little bit, and then I will be throwing the rest of it away. Yeah, I have a tea tree oil shampoo too. I can't smell it. I can't smell any of Mom's lotion that I'm using. Ram gave me this calming spray that's lavender. Can't really smell that either. I opened up tea tree oil today because somebody said for the keloid, they applied it every day on their piercing for a month and it went away. Couldn't smell that really. I smelled like 5% of what it should smell like. Yeah, it's a little rough. It's a little rough. I also don't understand lasagna, but I think mush is great. June. Oh, sales are on and pretty good. Yeah, I'm still looking at rugs. But guys, they're so expensive because not only do you have to pay like $200 to $400 for the rug itself, you also have to buy a rug pad to go underneath it, and that can run you over $100 per rug, which means every rug is $300 to $500. Like, Jesus. The comment said they applied it before going to bed every day for a month for the keloid. Mattresses are expensive, and I got one that's pretty expensive, but given that I spend a third of my waking hours, or rather a third of my life not waking hours, it seems worth it, but carpets are different, I think. That's a funny idea, Sasha. I like that. Will you guys make me useful today? I guess we don't have the existential question asker in the crowd today, huh? That was kind of fun. Jay, I can't cook you food. Oh, Monday scaries. I feel it, but I also don't feel it. Yeah, listen to Rams. Ask me spicy questions. Your girl's got nothing to lose. She's eating a fucking chicken bone on a live stream. Aaron James says, American food is boring. Thai is so refreshing. Not all American food is boring. What was the craziest thing you ever did on a whim? I don't know. I think one of the most impulsive things I've ever done was on my sweet 16th birthday, in my fully fledged eating disorder time period of my life in high school. I was in the habit of over-exercising after lunch at school, probably a bulimic behavior, going on the treadmill and jogging before my next class. And that day I decided that I would increase the speed on the treadmill to a very high speed without my safety clip on. And I also decided I would close my eyes while doing that. I don't know if this was like hints and glimmers of some sort of weird intrusive thought, OCD type mental illness. Not sure. Never diagnosed with it, but What I didn't realize was because I was going at such a high speed without the safety clip on, with my eyes closed, that I was slowly and slowly and slowly moving forward towards the back of the running belt. This treadmill was situated up against the wall along a corner of the gymnasium. So when I finally did fall off the belt, while the belt was still running, I got thrown against the wall, which made me rebound and fall forward, and I fell on my knees onto the still running belt. And by the time my gym teacher got me into his office, he gave me a stern talking to. One of my knees had been worn down to a layer of my body where it was showing white. I don't know if it was bone or ligament or what, but he called the ambulance because liability. And how was that? In high school, I was so skinny that looking back at pictures from that era, there's no doubt in my mind that I was the poster child of anorexia. But I don't think that I actually had anorexia. I think that I was more on the bulimic side, because even though I didn't purge my food via vomiting, I purged via exercise and restriction. And that was the first phase of my disordered eating history, which grew to encompass other sorts of disordered eating. I have always felt arthritis, indeed. I think my body is starting to retain a lot of water. I feel very bloated, and I think it's mainly because I've been eating a lot more sodium to taste things, and my body's like, whoo, it's a lot of salt, baby. What I find funny about humans is they can be in so much denial of what's happening in their lives for such a long time. Why would people yell at other people for being gay? And like, now we realize as a society that being gay isn't even an issue the way that eating disorders are. Because an eating disorder that carries on for too long will ruin your life because of the health impacts that it has, both on your mental, physical, and psychological health. But being gay just has a negative impact in terms of external and internalized homophobia, which we can debate all day long and still not come to an answer as to why we must police other people. I think the general answer is we police other people because we want to police ourselves, but we can't bear to police ourselves because policing ourselves would mean that we must admit we're doing something wrong, and nobody wants to feel like they're doing anything wrong. So they're going to point out other people are doing shit wrong to make themselves feel better and to make themselves feel like they're normal, quote unquote normal. You can have debates without needing to be right about it. Have you ever been to a sauna? I can't remember, but I don't think I would like it. I also don't want to steam up my bathroom and like foster mold on the ceiling, you know? Why can't people just be happy? One, because we can't define what happiness is and we don't know what it is. Two, because our society actively destroys our ability to naturally be happy about stuff, because being able to generate our own happiness would mean that we don't participate in consumeristic capitalism as much, which would be detrimental to our entire world as we have it set up right now. I'm sure there are other reasons. What were you like as a kid? Probably a lot like this. Hi from the land of saunas. Where is that? Let's have another bowl of bones, shall we? Another bowl of bones. Finland! Finland's in the house. Now, honestly, for the people who were like, June, I want you to cook me stuff. Now, really, if I cooked you a mess of chicken bones, you wouldn't want to eat this shit, would you? Hello, France. Comment allez-vous? Do you think Twitter is going to be completely run into the ground by Musk? I look forward to it. If you could choose your favorite place and spend a whole month there, where would you go and what would you like to do there? All expense paid? Whoa. One place? What an experiment. My favorite place. My favorite place. Okay. I'm going to choose a place that I've never been to before. And I can't really guarantee you that it's my favorite place. But I'm going to say Marseille. Because the first thought that I came up with was I want to go to Paris for Mom. Because she always wanted to go to Paris to eat all the croissants. But then I said, I don't actually want to go to Paris. But I have always fantasized about going to Marseille. Which seems like the Naples of France. And I tend to like southern cities more. A little bit rustic and rogue. A little bit messy and chaotic like me. And maybe they will have croissants there. I don't know. So Marseille? Who's going to get me to go to Marseille? Je suis content, mais un petit triste. That's my elementary French. Bonjour, Montreal. Or do you pronounce the T? Is it Montreal or is it Montreal? I don't know. Hi, Lex02116. Welcome. You know, I'm gonna season this shit up, even if my body, like, please no more salt, because I really want to be able to enjoy my food, as hard as it is. I was thinking about it, that should I die from sodium overdose, I do want to know that I had some bites of food that I could taste. Which begs the question, what is the objective reality here? The fact that I'm eating too much sodium for my own good, or that I still can't taste it? Even though the flavor is objectively there. Does objectivity truly matter if you are not objective yourself? Hell yeah, start your kids on foreign languages early. They're such sponges. What kind of gossip do you want the people to have? Ram. Yeah, he is the Ram, indeed. So, Ram might start his own YouTube channel where he shows you how he cooks the most amazing food in his patio. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a simultaneous stream from his backyard one day. if you guys behave. Yes, I know I eat a lot of sodium. I know. We'll bring you special content on the blurriest of phones just in time for the holidays. We love blurry content and bony content. Everybody says I should go on Chopped, but no invite, guys. People have been saying this for like 2 years now, but I still have no invite, so. You know, all we need to give ourselves is the time to acclimate to things. People aren't used to seeing 240p resolution because everybody has like fucking 8K, 8K, HD, whatever, but you get used to it. What's your most vivid memory when first living in the US? There's so much trauma in that question. I remember when I came home one day from school and cried because my dad had to cut out chewing gum that somebody had put in my hair. And it was especially sad because I had come to the United States with a fresh haircut that was a boy cut. And I got made fun of the boy cut because people thought I was a boy. And I had finally started to grow out of that boy cut into a slight bob when this happened. So it's filled with memories like that. That time was especially rough because the kids would do this I chant where they go like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, blah, 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 blah. I don't remember, but they would do the, you know, the slanty eye thing with their fingers on the corners of their eyes. And they would do it to my face. And I think I didn't really know English at that point, so I might have even started doing it with them, not realizing that it was fucking racist as fuck. Funny how you participate in your own demise because society calls you to assimilate. All these different sources of shame that will build up over time. Okay. Fascinating for this. I don't taste this furikake as much as the plum one because the plum one has acidity to it. It's tart. So let's go back to the plum one. Our umeboshi furikake that Aaron brought back from Tokyo many years ago. Ask me more about my childhood. Let's go into deep dive therapy. Hi, Dan. So I think part of why I really like having short hair sometimes is because of the misgendering that happens. Because you know how Freud says that we like to reenact and relive through our traumas in controlled scenarios so that we feel like we have a sense of control and mastery over them as they replay. So now that as an adult that I could choose to have short hair, that I have control over the result of people misgendering me, and that part of it is with my implicit agreement and allowance and permission, is a sort of psychological healing, I guess, of my childhood memories of when I had no control over how my hair was styled and how other kids reacted to it and treated me for it. I think for a lot of that period of my life as a new immigrant, maybe made me think about gender unconsciously because I didn't have the vocabulary to process what gender is back then, or understand what gender is back then. I don't know if I feel the impulse to shave my hair again, but I'm not going to say never. It did feel very liberating to be, quote unquote, crazy, to shave my head off. My mom freaked out for sure, and now mom won't freak out anymore. So I believe we can understand a lot about other people based on what their favorite childhood cartoon was. Okay. I liked Dexter's Laboratory. I identified with Dexter a lot. I liked the Powerpuff Girls. Bubbles was my favorite. I envied Blossom, and I think I secretly wanted to be Buttercup. I didn't understand as a kid why everybody was always calling Barney gay. That was really confusing. Everybody was making fun of that show. I don't understand why. I really enjoyed Clifford too. Oh, let me go back to that comment. Growing up, I was made fun of so much for my weight, no money to participate in the cool school functions, and more. Although going through that then made me a stronger, more compassionate mother now. I never went to prom because my high school decided to have like part of the prom on a boat, and then the reception would be held at fucking Tavern on the Green, which is a very expensive restaurant in Central Park. I think the tickets were over $200, plus you would have to buy a dress. They had this thing where you could sell chocolates to kind of earn your ticket if you sold enough chocolates. And I actually started doing it before I realized, fuck, I don't think I want this that bad. So I didn't end up going to prom because I'm sure my parents would have scrounged up the money, but I didn't want it. So I never went to prom. I don't think I missed out on much except learning after the fact that like people my age at my school smoked, did drugs, and had sex already at that age. I was scandalized. I had no idea because I went to a high school without football team or cheerleader team, so like not really a normal American high school, and was never exposed to that kind of like bad boy, bad girl vibes at my school. Um, so, I think even if I didn't go, the act of not going to prom didn't impact me as much as the mental thought of not going to prom, because it reinforced this narrative that I didn't belong. And I think that was probably a more formative event than I gave it credit for at the time. Building up this persona of mine that I felt safety and comfort and security in as the eternal foreigner. Which, for better or for worse, here we are. I'm surprised nobody's commented on how much microplastics I'm grinding into my food yet, using this plastic grinder. Jalen, you're the eternally worried Asian mom, aren't you? Favorite cuisine? What a question. Depends on the meal. What course are we talking? I don't really ride a bike, no. Well, thankfully I live in New York City. Most people take public transportation. My favorite band or genre of music. Currently, I am not obsessed, but I love listening to Wise Blood's newest album. Her name is spelled Weyes, Blood. I tend to like really chill R&B. I also obviously love pop, given my John Mayer phase. Give me an idea what to cook with barley. Never tried but bought one bag today. You can treat it like you would treat brown rice. So you can make rice pudding. You can cook it like a grain and use it as a side dish. You can put it into beef and barley soup. You can even grind it into a flour. I might consider getting a cat for myself, but not yet. Can you play an instrument? Which one would you play if you did? I used to play the piano. I don't know how to play it anymore. If I could learn a new instrument, it would either be something really impractical, like the cello, huge, or something really portable and easily shareable and impressible, like I want to say the guitar, but I more than likely would choose the fucking accordion instead. because I want to be a little bit weirder than just the guitar, you know? I'm probably better off choosing the guitar. I probably like metaphorically get laid more. But accordion. Let's go with the weird ones. This is not my mom's dress, but my grandma did fix it up. I'd be down to learn the saxophone too, for sure. I don't know the difference between the two saxophones, unfortunately. Currently, I discovered today that matcha tastes a little bit fishy to me. None of the herbalness, just more of the umami in a bad way. Some people do a better job of playing that they belong than others. I've decided that game is pretty exhausting for me to play, and I've abandoned it. Much like playing other sorts of games in life. I just don't think the ending is worth it for me as a payoff. But yeah, if you want to know what kind of music that I'm into currently, Instagram would be the better place. I post songs on there from Spotify when I listen to them pretty often, and I have like whole story collections up top. Probably have like almost 1,000 songs collected. I tried streaming and gaming with Aaron a couple of times, but I truly suck at it, and it was like very stressful for me. So no, I don't know how to game. Unfortunately, never grew up with video games. I don't know. I can only fail at them miserably, and I also see that I think Ram told me yesterday that like they just lowered the monetization for a lot of Twitch streamers too. So people are angry about that. My Instagram's handle is the same as my new handle on YouTube. It's thank 9 stars. If you just type in my name and add Instagram on Google, it'll pop up. Google it first, y'all. You'll find it. There's no S after the thank. It's just the thank number 9 stars. It's my Chinese name. Literally translated. As I've said many times here. Thanks, Ram. I like how all the people who are providing answers are misspelling it. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear about your cat. But I appreciate you all chipping in. Better than my passive aggressive Google it, bitch, right? This is why I can't ever play the influencer game, guys. I don't know. I can't pin images. I can't pin messages anymore. It looks like from my phone. So, sorry, y'all. Until we can get Spectrum out of this building and someone else in here, we're going to have to play with impaired live streaming. I wonder how my frozen pie will taste. Do you think it'll taste like anything? Let's read while we wait for our pie to kind of defrost. I'm going to read a very small snippet that happens at the end of a chapter called A Tour of the Opera, where our narrator is talking to a 3.5-year-old named Janine. Did you like the showboat? I asked Janine. All right. Her face was flushed, and I thought it best to get her out of the sun. We passed the refreshment stand, unoccupied except for the vendor himself. Toddy, honey, will you buy me another ice cream cone? Why? I want one, honey. Why? I want one. Why do you want one? I want one. But why? Tell me why. I want one. She got one, and we strolled back to the office in all the heat and light. Okay, now I'm going to read a full chapter. This is chapter 25. This one is called The Inquiry. Chapter 25, The Inquiry. It was a few minutes after 6 o'clock when I reached my room, set my straw hat on the dresser top, and prepared to put in a last evening's work on my inquiry. I gathered around my writing desk the 3 peach baskets and 1 cardboard box of notes and data, put in a convenient place the empty beef stew can, my ashtray, and began my night's work by transcribing from memory the notes I'd made that day and filing them at an appropriate depth in one of the peach baskets. Then I sat back in the chair and stared out the window for a while, deciding which aspect of the project should receive my attention. When the clock on the People's Trust building chimed 6:30, the Max, as usual, had eaten early, I sat up, took a long ruled sheet of yellow legal paper from one of the pads stacked on the desk, and wrote on the top, 1. Nothing has intrinsic value. Because I regarded the sentence for some minutes before adding to it, and because staring and regarding is duller to describe than to do, let me use the time to explain as carefully as I can the nature and history of my inquiry and of the great project of which the inquiry itself is only one part. The full title of the inquiry, if it ever should reach the stage of completion where a title would be appropriate, will be An Inquiry into the Circumstances Surrounding the Self-Destruction of Thomas T. Andrews of Cambridge, Maryland, on Groundhog Day, 1930, more especially into the causes therefore, or something of the sort. It is an attempt to learn why my father hanged himself, no more. And no less, for it became apparent to me after a mere 2 years of questioning, searching, reading, and staring, that there is no will-o'-the-wisp so elusive as the cause of any human act. Easy enough to spend weeks poring over bank statements, budget books, letters from stockbrokers, to spend months examining newspaper files, stock market reports, volumes on the theory and the history of economics, to spend years in careful, unhurried, and apparently casual questioning of every person who had more than just a superficial acquaintanceship with my father. All this is just more or less laborious research. But it is another thing to examine this information and see in it so clearly that to question is out of the question, the cause of a human act. In fact, it's impossible, for as Hume pointed out, causation is never more than an inference, and any inference involves at some point the leap from what we see to what we can't see. Very well. It's the purpose of my inquiry to shorten as much as is humanly possible the distance over which I must leap, to gather every scrap of information that a human being might gather concerning the circumstances of my father's suicide. Say, if you wish, that the true reason for this investigation is my reluctance to admit that Dad hanged himself because he was afraid to face his creditors. Perhaps so. noble work has been accomplished for more questionable reasons, although consciously, at least, I have a different reason. At any rate, I am certainly prepared to admit that my observation of the data I collect is biased, and it's partly for that reason that even in 1937 I kept one peach basket reserved for notes on myself. It was into this basket that my 2 thoughts of the day, for example, were filed. It would be more accurate to say that my rejection of the stock market losses as the cause of his suicide was the hypothesis with which I approached the inquiry, the thesis that oriented my investigations. You understand, do you, that the nature of my purpose, to make as short as possible the gap between fact and opinion, renders the inquiry interminable? One could, of course, stop at some point and declare, I have sufficient information to warrant the inference that the cause of Thomas T. Andrews' suicide was such and such. But my purpose is not really to leap the gap, which can be deep, however narrow, only to shorten it. So the task is endless. I've never fooled myself about that. But the fact that it's endless doesn't mean that I can't work on other aspects of the grand project, even though the completion of those aspects ultimately depends on the leaping of the gap in my inquiry. It doesn't follow that because a goal is unattainable, one shouldn't work toward its attainment. Besides, as I've observed elsewhere, processes continued for long enough tend to become ends in themselves, and if for no other reason, I should continue my researches simply in order to occupy pleasantly 2 hours after dinner. But let's suppose that by some miracle it were given to me to know the unknowable, to know the cause or causes of Dad's suicide. My inquiry would be complete. But my researches would not, for after supper on the day of that revelation, I should draw to my desk a different peach basket, that one beside the lamp there, and after some minutes of wall staring, resume work on a larger inquiry, of which the above mentioned is at most a relevant chapter. And this inquiry, had I world enough and time, might someday be titled, An Inquiry into the Life of Thomas T. Andrews of Cambridge, Maryland, 1867 to 1930, giving a special consideration to his relations with his son, Todd Andrews, 1900 to blank. In other words, a complete study of my father's mind and life from his birth in the front bedroom of the Andrews house to his death in its cellar, from the umbilicus that tied him to his mother to the belt that hanged him from the floor joist. A considerable task. It is my aim to learn all that can be learned of my father's life, to get the best possible insight into the workings of his mind. To do this, I must, in addition to carrying out on a larger scale all the researches described in connection with the other inquiry, perform other extra labors as well. I must read, for example, all the books that I know my father read, looking for influences on his character and way of thinking. If one can compare infinities, this task is even more endless than the other. I said a moment ago that the death inquiry was but a chapter in the life inquiry. In another sense, the study of Dad's life is only a necessary preliminary to the study of his death. And ultimately, I should say, they stand side by side, for they share a common purpose. What I really want to discover is the nature and extent of my father's contribution to our imperfect communication. Imperfect communication. That's the problem. If you understand that, for to go into greater detail would enmesh us beyond hope of ever returning to the story, then it's time to pass on to the last document of all, of which my 2 colossal inquiries combined are no more than important studies for one aspect, the letter to my father. This document dates from the fall of 1920, when, after my unsuccessful attempts to tell Dad about my uncertain heart, I enrolled in the university. I had resolved, you'll remember, not to tell him at all while I lived, because I believed that my death was imminent and that therefore I'd as well humor him during what remained of my life. Nevertheless, I worried that I'd been unable to tell him when I wanted to, and I was no cynic then, that the both of us would go to our graves without ever having understood each other. And so I began to write a letter to my father, working on it in snatches during my 4 exhausting years at college. The letter was to be found by him after my death, and its original purpose was to explain what Dr. John Frisbee had told me about my heart. But this purpose, though I never lost sight of it, was soon subsumed into a larger one. I set out to study myself, to discover why my communication with Dad had always been imperfect. I reviewed my whole life carefully, selecting and rejecting incidents for use in the letter. I spent a month at least attempting to explain to Dad why I'd never finished building my boat in the backyard. More than a year went to searching my muddy embrace with the German sergeant with whom my communication had been pitifully imperfect, and to analyzing the effects on me of a certain particular popping noise. I worked, of course, irregularly, completing perhaps 20 pages of notes and 1 page of letter every month, seldom more than that. By the time I was installed in law school, the letter was perhaps 50 pages long, and I had a respectable stack of notes. I did not shy away from mentioning Betty June Gunter, even although I realize now that those early attempts to understand our liaison were shallow. Especially between 1925 and 1927, the first of my saintly years, I worked with some diligence on the letter. Then in 1927, when I set up practice in Cambridge, the letter and notes were packed into my trunk. I moved in with Dad and to my great pleasure found myself, or so I believed, closer to him than I'd ever been before. He was still garrulous and gruff by turns, but I thought I was beginning to understand him somewhat. At least I had hope that our communication was becoming less imperfect. And in this hope I abandoned the letter. I had, you see, always assumed that the source of the imperfection was in myself. And it seemed to me that perhaps as I matured, although I was 27 then, my difficulty would vanish. But Dad hanged himself, and rack my memory as I might until sleep was a red-eyed wish, I could find no adequate reason for his act. I realized then that I had been pursuing an impossible task since 1920. To understand an imperfect communication requires perfect knowledge of the party at each end, and I've been studying only myself. When, in the course of moving into the Dorset Hotel, my letters and notes came to light, I put the pages of the letter on my new writing desk, dumped the notes into an empty suitcase. Not until later did I begin to use peach baskets, and began work on it again. I saw at once that the next step was to open an inquiry into Dad's life, in order to understand the nature and extent of his contribution to our imperfect communication. And at the same time, I saw the necessity of a special and separate inquiry into the circumstances surrounding his death, this inquiry to be in the nature of a control, for unless the suicide were explained, nothing was explained, and also perhaps a key, for should I find the answer to the question of his death, the whole problem might be solved by the same solution. Thus, my 2 inquiries were initiated, but they did not close off my work on the letter and the notes on myself. You see then the purposes of the 3 peach baskets beside my desk in 1937. One represented the life inquiry, one the death inquiry, the third the less organized self-inquiry. And the cardboard box, Morton's marvelous tomatoes, contained the drafts of the letter to my father. To be sure, he can never now receive it. If you don't see that this fact only demonstrates further the imperfection of my communication with him, and hence intensifies the need for the letter instead of eliminating it, then between you and me too, the communication is less than perfect. But you shall have to investigate it. I've enough to do with the 3 baskets and the box beside me. 4 parallel projects which, like parallel lines, will meet only in infinity. On this particular evening, to be sure, their progress would cease, for the notes I took then I intended to be my last. 1. Nothing has intrinsic value. 2. The reasons for which people attribute value to things are always ultimately irrational. 3. There is, therefore, no ultimate reason for valuing anything. By 7 o'clock, these were the things I had written on my piece of paper, not knowing exactly which file would finally receive them. But I felt very strongly that the sequence of ideas which represented my day's rationalizing was of supreme importance to my inquiries and my letter. In fact, when in the same list I entered the Roman numeral 4, without yet writing anything after it, I had a nostril-flaring sensation of the chase. I felt that some sort of answer was on the verge of being treed. I called these ideas rationalizings, and so they were. The post facto justification on logical grounds of what had been an entirely personal, unlogical resolve. Such, you remember, had been the case with all my major mind changes. My masks were each first assumed, then justified. My heart, reader, my heart. You must comprehend quickly, if you are to comprehend at all, that those masks were not assumed to hide my face, but to hide my heart from my mind, and my mind from my heart. Understand it now, because I may not live to end the chapter. To be sure, each mask hid other things as well, as a false face hides identity and personality as well as nose and mouth. But it was to hide my enigmatic heart that I became a rake, a saint, and then a cynic. For when one mask no longer served its purpose of disguise, another had perforce to take its place at once. I had been a not very extraordinary boy. One day in 1919, while standing retreat, I collapsed on the parade grounds at Fort Meade. Dr. Frisbee looked up from his stethoscope, and I began to eat, drink, and be merry at Johns Hopkins, my first mask. In 1924, Betty June Gunter slashed me with a broken bottle. A man named Cozy rabbit punched me and threw me out of a Calvert Street brothel. Marvin Rose found a wicked infection in my prostate, and I became a saint, my second mask. In 1930, my father, with whom, thinking my saintliness was bringing on maturity, I had thought I was beginning to communicate, inexplicably hanged himself. I took the belt from his neck, mailed my legacy to Colonel Morton, and became a cynic, my third mask. And each time it did not take me long to believe that my current attitude was not only best for me, because it put me on some kind of terms with my heart, but best in itself, absolutely. Then on the night of June 20th or 21st, 1937. But now you must know my last secret. In my life, I have experienced emotion intensely on only 5 occasions, each time a different emotion. With Betty June in my bedroom, I learned mirth. With myself in the Argonne, I learned fear. With my father in the basement of our house, I learned frustration. With Jane Mack in her summer cottage, I learned surprise. With my heart in my hotel room on the night before this last day, I learned despair. Utter despair. A despair beyond wailing. My despair began not with my heart, but with two other parts of my body. Jane was in my room for the night, as you know. She had come in at perhaps 10 o'clock. We'd had a drink and retired shortly afterwards. Jane had sat Turk fashion on the bed for some time, plucking her eyebrows before we turned out the light, and I had stroked her idly while I lay beside her reading a book. We hadn't been talking at all. Then, taking my hand in hers to examine it, she said, "Did you ever ask Marvin about your fingers, Todd? My, they're ugly." I jerked my hand away, blushing hotly. Had you forgotten that my fingers were clubbed? So had I, reader, and Jane's remark, though offered in a mild enough tone, stung me out of proportion to my actual sensitivity about my fingers, perhaps because I'd been caressing her. "Oh, I'm awfully sorry," she said at once. "I didn't mean to insult you at all." She tried to kiss my fingers then, but I couldn't bear the thought. I kept them out of sight. My subsequent failure at lovemaking no doubt grew out of that. For one thing, in her efforts to redeem herself, Jane made all the advances immediately, and I have rarely responded well in such situations. For another, the remark about my fingers made me irrationally disgusted with my whole skinny body, and disgust is a cold bedfellow for desire. "Please tell me what's wrong, Toddy," Jane pleaded. "I really don't want to hurt you." There was more to this than ordinary solicitude, as I realized next day when she announced the Italian trip. I assured her that I wasn't offended. After the first few minutes, I really wasn't. But both her curiosity and her desire had to go unsatisfied. I got up, smoked a cigarette, went to bed, tossed and turned, sat up and read, drank another drink, and tossed and turned some more. Jane fell asleep, annoyance and injured pride still pouting from her lips. I kissed her very lightly on her frowning brow and got out of bed, resolved, since sleep was impossible, to work on the inquiry. My mood was black. I had little patience with my work. It is only in very weak moments like this that I call my project silly. I sat for an hour in the window, looking over at the post office and thinking how incomparably silly my 13 years' work was. How silly, for that matter, was my whole life during those 13 years, one feeble mask after another. There was a symptomatic thought. It was, I think, the first time I'd ever used the word masks in referring to what I'd always considered to be the stages of my intellectual development. Moreover, it was not the thought of a cynic, for as soon as it lodged in my consciousness, it sent out quick rootlets of despair to all corners of my mind. Indeed, as I vaguely recognized at the time, it was a sign that the mask of my cynicism, I saw then that it was a mask, was wearing thin, and no longer doing its job. If it were, would I even have thought of my heart? And suddenly, my heart filled my entire body. It was not my heart that would burst, but my body. So full was it of my heart, and every beat was sick. Surely it would fail. I clapped my hand quickly to my chest, feeling for the beat, clutched at the window frame to keep from falling, stared at nothing, my mouth open like a fish on the beach. And this, not in pain, but in despair. Here is what I saw: that all my masks were half-conscious attempts to master the fact with which I had to live. That none had made me master of that fact. That where cynicism had failed, no future mask could succeed. That, in short, my heart was the master of all the rest of me, even of my will. It was my heart that had made my masks, not my will. The conclusion that swallowed me was this: there is no way to master the fact with which I live. Futility gripped me by the throat. My head was tight. The impulse to raise my arms and eyes to heaven was almost overpowering, but there was no one for me to raise them to. All I could do was clench my jaw, squint my eyes, and shake my head from side to side. But every motion pierced me with its own futility, every new feeling with its private hopelessness, until a battery of little agonies attacked from all sides, each drawing its strength from the great agony within me. I can't say for how long I sat. What finally happened, when I had become sufficiently demoralized, was that my nerves, fatigued already, succumbed to the unusual strain. My body was suddenly soaked in perspiration. I trembled from head to foot. Indeed, I can't find it in me to deny that, had no other crutch been available, I should very possibly have ended that night on my knees, laying my integrity on the altar of the word God. But another crutch was within reach. Jane, now sleeping soundly. And the embarrassment that I feel at telling you how I went shocked and trembling to the bed, how I buried my head blindly in her lap, how I lay there shuddering until sleep found me, my knees clasped to my chest, fighting despair as one fights appendicitis. This embarrassment is not different from that I'd feel at having to confess that I'd buried myself in God. I am in truth embarrassed, reader, but in good faith I recommend this refuge to your attention. There is nothing in it of the ostrich, because the enemy you flee is not exterior to yourself. I have no idea whether Jane was aware of any of this. At the tick of 6, I popped awake. My head was on the pillow, Jane's on my right shoulder. In great wisdom, I inhaled the smell of her hair, sunshine, and salt. There have been no women in my bed since that morning, and yet still at 6 a.m., I can summon to my nostrils the smell of Jane Mack. I sat up and looked around me, swelling with incipient wisdom. What had been the problem I buried? As was my habit, before I got up, I reached to the windowsill for my Sherbrooke, took a good pull, and shuddered all over, but no answer came. I rose carefully from the bed, so as not to wake Jane, donned my seersucker suit, splashed cold water on my face, and realized that on this day I would destroy myself. Of course! I grinned at my dripping face in the mirror, dumb, surprised, stunned. There was the end of masks. Of course. There was no mastering the fact with which I lived, but I could master the fact of my living with it by destroying myself, and the result was the same. I was the master. I choked back a snicker, for crying out loud. 3. There is therefore no ultimate reason for valuing anything. Now I added, including life, and at once the next proposition was clear. 4. Living is action. There's no final reason for action. 5. There's no final reason for living. This last statement merited some minutes of expressionless contemplation, after which I capped my pen and clipped it in my pocket, put Eustatia's letter where Jimmy would find it, fetched my straw, and left my room without a shred of regret. The inquiry was closed. And we lost so many people. Oh, nobody likes postmodern story time, huh? Okay. Well, I liked it. And now we get to eat pie. I like reading books out loud. I think it brings them closer to life to me. Somehow it makes them more a part of me. I need to find a buddy who can read one of the chapters with me, because he starts a chapter in 2 simultaneous voices. If a mom only consisted of reading stories, then I would be a great mom. But unfortunately, there's so much more to being a mom than reading stories out loud. I've not read that book, no. I haven't read a lot of Margaret Atwood. Bye, Sassy. See, The Sound and the Fury was one of my first favorite books ever in life. So, I've always liked a little bit of confusion. Yes, Pink Lady would work in a pie, but only if you like them crunchy. They don't really break down that well. They tend to retain their shapes a lot better than other kinds of apples, so. I think I read The Stranger maybe 10 years ago, and I enjoyed certain parts of it, but I found a little bit heavy-handed. I think I am on the mend, hopefully. Crunchy. I do remember liking To Kill a Mockingbird. I read Candide in senior year of high school. I remember liking 35% of it. It was like too much cheeky satire for me to appreciate in my time. My friend Dan got me these rice crackers. They're like fried rice cakes with sesame and caramel on one side. I can't taste it very well, but The texture is amazing. Sesame is very good. If there's one thing I do well, I think I make a lot of you hungry whenever I eat. Maybe we will see Dan in a video sometime. Maybe I will recruit all my friends to join me in videos. Interesting. Do you sweeten your black sesame tea? Is it a sweet concoction? All right, let's eat some figs with peanut butter. Any fun questions? Ooh, yeah. This copy is so old, I had to tape it back together because the binding fell apart while I was reading it. On the inside cover, it says John Montgomery, 1982. And in the back cover, there's a card. It's glued. It says, Merry Graduation, Maureen. I've never made beer yet, no. I don't really eat meals, no. I just snack. Figs. I do love figs. You thought this was one huge fig? Jesus. It's kind of gummy. I can't smell the figs right now, so I can't tell you. I'm feeling okay. I'm really bummed that I'm not testing negative yet, but I don't know. Do all figs have a wasp inside? You tell me. Hi, Mary. I guess that would be good protein if there's a bug disintegrated. The mouthfeel of the dates, there's tiny little seeds. They kind of taste like poppy seeds in texture. The rest of it is kind of like a denser medjool date. A little bit leathery. Unfortunately, I can't film Budget Eats on my own because the intellectual property of that show belongs to Hearst. The Floating Opera. I still can't taste this, actually. I think my taste was better in the morning. Can you see the seeds? Lots of little seeds. More numerous than the seeds you see on strawberries. I don't know much about nutrition for digestion. That was my fridge. My dream job. I would love to be able to be some sort of a group therapist, I think. I love candied persimmons. I just like dried persimmons. I also really like just being a vlogger. I would like to be able to produce more videos that I edit of my own. But yes, I also don't dream of labor. My friend Dan, who gifted me those rice crackers, was actually talking about exploring more of Queen's food scene that don't really get featured much in other shows. So we'll let that incubate for a while. Maybe we'll put it into practice. Tomorrow, I think we should do a butter tasting. Because fat is one of those things that I can still experience. I think that might be fun. When you are doing something you love, that does not seem like labor is true, but at any point you can cease to love it, right? It's not a constant. Man, I can't smell this apple either. I can still taste it a little bit of acidity. Hi, Can. You know what I really want? It's a ice cream cone from McDonald's. I am not making my own butter. No. Hot take, homemade butter does not actually taste that much better. And it's not worth the work. Getting a soft-serve ice cream cone delivered sounds like a horrible idea. "45 people just joined after I stopped reading and started eating random shit. I guess this is why mukbang is so popular. Why do I want the ice cream? Don't you want ice cream? There's a fetish related to everything. I love baked apples with peanut butter. Yes. What flavor ice cream are you about to eat right now? You gotta describe it to us. I love putting people to sleep, you know? I feel full right now. I just want texture in my mouth. That's what she said. You can definitely feel full when you snack. As soon as I finish this apple, I'm gonna sign off. So, you have approximately 2 more questions to ask me if you desire. Otherwise, I hopefully will see you tomorrow.